Hey everyone, and welcome to part 2 of creating a C# RPG game. So in this tutorial I'm going to be teaching you guys how to set up the basic stats that we're going to be using in the game. So these are things like HP, mana, the different stats that the player could be using, and different stuff that we can use in the future when we'll be calculating each stat individually. Or we're adding like buffs to the stats, or if we're being attacked by a monster, checking maybe our armor or magic resist and different stuff like that. So I'm just going to go over creating some basic stats, and then in the future tutorials we can use those stats and actually calculate them into our code. So what I'm going to do here is create a new C# script, and just to make this simple we can just call it user stats. Open that up. Here we go. Now, what you could do is use serialize to actually enter in each stat within the editor itself, but me, I just like using public, and that pretty much states that I can just edit it in there. And also you can use this when you're calculating different things across scripts. So if you're doing something in the user movement and you want to reference the user stat script and you want to grab a variable out of there, you want to make it public so it can access it. So we're just going to be making all these stats public so we can use them. And I'll just go through the list of different stats. If I need to explain anything, I will. The first one we're going to create is a string, and this will just be username. So we're going to have it so our player can enter in whatever name they want to choose from, and that can be displayed above a health bar or above the character itself, just referencing to whatever name they want to select for the game. And we'll create a public int for level. And so I guess I can go over some of these things. So strings are just basic text. So you could do something like that, equals, and then your name if you wanted to, like that. But we're just going to be editing it in the editor. And int is just a whole number, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, etc., etc. And yeah, we're just going to be using that for our player's level. Now we can get into our other stats, which we're mostly just going to be using floats for these values, because for some of these stats we're going to be using decimals, and when we're calculating stuff like health bars, the different values we want these set as a float so it can smoothly progress and whatnot for like XP bars, HP, mana. So we're just going to make these all floats. So I'm going to be doing cur HP and public float max HP. And so what this is for is just, our basic health, what our HP is currently at and what our max HP is at, so it doesn't go over that value. Now we don't really need a minimum value unless you are actually trying to go below 0 for whatever reason, but for us we're just going to make our minimum 0, and we can state that in our updates so it doesn't go over that. So we're going to be adding in HP, and then we're going to be adding in mana as well. Current mana, public float, max mana. And that's for just our basic stats. Now we can jump down here a little bit, and we can start messing with some of our other variables. Now, I guess we could add to a lot of this later on, but I just want to kind of simplify the things for now. And we're just going to be adding in some stuff for our attacks and whatnot. So I'm just going to do basic attack power, public float, cur attack power. And I guess I can go over why I'm using a base and a cur. So we're not going to have a max for this because, unless you actually wanted to have a max amount of attack power that you could actually have. But the reason why we're doing base is because we want the highest amount that we've gotten. So let's say we had 10 base attack power and we ended up getting a buff that made it up to 15. Well, after a certain time period you want it to go back down to the base attack power after that buff has weared off. Now, if you don't have a basic value to reference to, you don't know exactly what that is. Now, what you could do is you could add something like 5 to that 10 value, and then once it goes away, subtract the 5. But there's some places in there where it could get screwed up, so you really just want something to reference to in the beginning. So that's why I'm using base, and not just one curve value. So this is going to be for our basic attack power, so when we're hitting an enemy, we can have a specific range of damage. So we could also do like a min value and a max value. So we could have a minimum amount of attack power and a max amount of attack power. Or we could just calculate that as we go. It doesn't really matter. So maybe if your base is at 10, we can just say between 10 and 20 would be your actual power. Or however you want to calculate it. It doesn't really matter too much, but yeah. Public float, and then we can do base attack speed, float, curve attack speed. So this is how fast we're actually attacking the enemy, or we're going to be able to attack the enemy. So each swing that you do with your sword, that's going to be this attack speed. How long does it take to actually hit the enemy, and then what power is going to be applied there. And then we can also add in some other stats. We can do base dodge. And we're going to be using dodge from when our enemy is attacking us, and maybe we dodged the attack, maybe we didn't. We can have a certain percentage to calculate what our dodge is. So let's say we had 50% dodge, so half the time the enemy should miss. Now we can also add in some stats in here where if we're facing away from the enemy, so if our back is turned, our enemy, or when we receive the damage, we can check and see if we're actually, facing that enemy, or the enemy can calculate that if we're facing them. And if we're not, we can just automatically ignore the dodge, because most of the time when you're facing your back towards an enemy, it'll be 100% hit rate for the most part. You could also add in a miss counter. So when you're actually attacking an enemy, or should I say hit, so we could add that in as well. Hit percent. Oh, no, that should have been base. Okay. So yeah, this will just be, if we're swinging at our enemy, maybe there's only a certain percentage of hit chance that you actually hit that enemy. And let's see, these base stats. Okay, I guess those can be our base combat stats. We can add in some magic stuff later for range attacks, but I guess we could go through and add in a couple more stats that we might need for this. So we could do another public float, HP regen timer, and then we could do HP regen amount, and we could do the same thing for our mana. Timer. Amount. Okay, and then we could do some XP. So these will just be our XP amounts. Now, for our max XP, once we actually do level up, we can increase this by a certain amount and reset the current HP down to 0 and increase our level. And after we level up each time, we can just times that, and we can add in different stat amounts to our base stats to increase them. And let's see. I guess we could just do one more public bool. And now a bool is just a true or false statement, and we'll do is dead. So I guess this looks pretty good for now. So once again, this tutorial is just a basic thing. I know it's kind of long. Most people can just skip over this tutorial, but like I said before, these tutorials are definitely for people who are new to C#, new to making RPG games or anything like that. You can just follow these tutorials, try going over some simple things. Some of these people can just skip over and ignore. But if you want to follow along and you want to follow or learn how to do each one of these things, I know in the past I've done JavaScript tutorials where I've gone over a lot of this stuff. So it's nothing really that new. But yeah, just getting everything set up. And that's how you do some basic stats that we're going to use in the future for our next tutorials.